Hey guys, so today I'd just like to walk you through your program. We're just going to kind of look through all of the palettes and talk about what some of them do and just kind of get acquainted with everything on your screen. If you are new to Photoshop and are just barely opening it, this is going to be a really good way for you to just kind of learn how to get around the program. If you have already opened Photoshop and you're used to using some of the tools, it's going to be a little bit of review for you, and there might be a few things that you learn along the way that you didn't already know. I refer to these as palettes. I just do. Some people call them windows, some people call them boxes, but for the sake of this tutorial, I call them palettes. So these palettes can be adjusted and moved however you want them to be. And you might have palettes up here that I don't have, and you might not have, there might be some that you don't have that I have on my screen. This window tab up here has all of the windows or palettes that you can put on your screen. I have the ones that I use the most on here, and I have them arranged the way I like them to be. But you can change it around. You can take these and you can put them all on one and make them just tabs. I like to have certain palettes together and other ones separate, so this is just how I keep my screen, but you can put them however you want to. We're going to start over here on the left hand side of the screen, and this is your toolbox palette. It has all the tools that you're going to be using. Some you probably won't ever use at all, but it depends. Like I said, it's a personal preference. Some people do things a little bit differently, but I'm only going to be able to show you the way that I edit. So for me, the most important tools for me are the brush tool. They're extremely important when you start talking about layers, and we start working with layers. You'll use the brush a lot. This is the heal tool. This is the clone tool. Another one I use a lot is the crop tool. And this down here is your color palette. Again, when you start using layers, it's essential. You will use it all of the time. So that pretty much sums up most of the tools. Oh, and the dodge and burn tool. Another thing you need to know is that if you right click on these icons, they will usually have other tools that go underneath of them. So the dodge, burn, and the sponge tool are all under one icon. Okay, let's move over to the right side of the screen, and this one right here is my layers palette. The layers is where you are going to work on your images in multiple layers. If I hit Control J, it's going to duplicate the layer, and you can then work on that layer without affecting your first layer. And we'll talk more about that later on in another lesson. If you don't see the layers palette, again, go up here to the Windows tab and find layers and make sure that it's checked, and then you can adjust it or put it wherever you want on your screen. So this next one right here beside it is the actions palette. You may already have some actions, or you may have heard other photographers talking about having actions. Actions are a wonderful way to add those final touches to your images, and they're really great time savers. We'll have another lesson down the road about how to install and use actions, but on my page there should be a link to my two favorite action makers that I use. They're the only two that I use, and I love them to pieces. So go ahead and click on those links and take a look after you're done watching the video. But we will come back to actions later. This is the history tab. I leave it in the same palette. This is really, really important. When you start to work on an image, everything you do will get recorded under this history tab. And what makes it so special is let's say I would never do this, but let's say I made a big black mark on her face. Did you see how each time I touched that brush tool, it showed up here? Well, all I have to do to take that away is go back 1 or 2, and then it's gone, and I can continue working on from that point without destructing my image in any way. So the history palette is a big lifesaver. Again, if you don't have the history tab, window, history, and then put it where you want it. This is the info and the histogram palette. The info palette is going to help you. Info and histograms are going to help you be able to see if you have like a blown out area that you don't want blown out. It's going to tell you if your blacks are, you know, at 0, or if your whites are at 255, then you have a blown out spot on your picture. Your histogram can help you see where your image sits as far as exposure is concerned. So those are 2 pretty important ones to have up and to check often. So those are the ones that I usually keep up. This properties tab, I have no idea even how this got up here, but this will be a good way to show you that you can remove tabs that you don't want. So I don't use this properties tab, so you can just right click on it and close it, and then it will be gone. Let's just talk about these top ones really quick. File, you're going to use this to save your image, obviously. Place, you use maybe sometimes. I use this more for when I'm creating a document or a scrapbook page, but there are times when I need to place another image or something on top of another one, and I would use file place. This is also where you're going to open an image to get into Photoshop. If I hit open and I come down here, if you shoot in RAW, your files are probably going to look something like this. If you shoot in JPEG, they're going to look like this. But I shoot in RAW, so mine would look like this. I would open it, and then another screen is going to open, which is Adobe Camera Raw. And you can go in here and you can make any adjustments that you think you need to make. I've already made the adjustments that I wanted to make over here, and then you just click Open Image. Okay, and then it will come up on your screen. If you shoot in JPEG, you do File, Open, and it will come straight in to Photoshop. The Edit tab, you can undo one step back. You can step back once, or you can undo the very last thing that you did. I very rarely use that because I have the history panel right here, and I usually just do it that way. That's pretty much all I use in the Edit tab. Image, this is, you can use the adjustments. You can go to Image Adjustments, but again, you have a palette over here where you can do that same exact thing. And I actually think we skipped the adjustments palette, so we'll go back to that in just a minute. Okay, let's go there really quick. Sorry, guys. The adjustments tab is going to have, your palette is going to have very important layers in it. When you click on one of these, it'll create a new layer, and you can adjust things like the brightness and the contrast. I really don't use that one. If I'm adjusting the brightness and the contrast or my exposure, those would all be done in RAW for me. But I mean, levels is a big one. Curves, I use curves quite a bit. That's how I make my matte finish on my images. And this one is super important too. This is the hue saturation layer, and this is an adjustment layer that will help you take a certain color out of a photo. Like say you had somebody with quite a bit of red skin, you could pull that red out of the skin, and we will have more lessons on that later, but sorry I skipped that. I didn't mean to skip that. Path, another one, I don't even know how it got there again. I don't use it, so I'm just going to close it. Okay, so let's head back up here. Sorry guys, we're skipping around here. Image. We did image. Let's see. I don't use any auto features. That's a personal preference for me. prefer to make the adjustments on my own and not let the program choose for me. So that's another one that I don't use. Duplicate sometimes can be a good thing. I will make all of my adjustments to the picture that I want, and if I hit image and then duplicate, and I can name it something else if I want to. I could name it Olivia black and white. Okay, so say I did all the adjustments that I wanted to, but I want this one to be in black and white. I can then hit OK, and what it did was created two images now that are exactly the same, and I can work on a black and white layer, a black and white photo over here, and still keep my original one here without having to save it and then add the black and white and then save again. So it's kind of a little time saver. You can do it that way if you want to. Let's see, where were we? Image. That's about all I use in image. Okay, so layer. There's not a lot of times that I use layer. Sometimes you can do this again. You can use the image and adjustment layers, and that's going to add that duplicate layer over there. But again, these are your adjustment layers right here. You don't need to do that. Type, I have no idea what this is for. I've never really used it before. It looks like it's a lot of text stuff. And unless you're building like a flyer or a document or something, I don't know why you would use that. Select is a tool that I use very rarely, but sometimes if I need to select a small portion of the picture, like an eye or just a small area, this will be how you select and deselect it. But that's really all I use it for. Filter, the only thing I really use in filter is sharpen and unsharp mask. It's the only way I sharpen my images. So that's about all I use that for. Sometimes I will use the blur very, very rarely, but sometimes I do use a little bit of Gaussian blur. No idea what 3D is for. I've never even opened that tab until today. Okay, so view, another one that I really don't use very often. Sometimes I use the gamut warning every once in a while when I feel like I might have something a little bit out of gamut, but the zoom in and the zoom out, you can do it from here, or you can simply hit Control plus on your keyboard and it will zoom in on the picture, and Control minus on your keyboard will pull it out. I use lots and lots and lots of shortcut keys, and I will try to find you guys a link to a shortcut page that was really helpful to me, and you'll learn them as you go along in the lessons, but I just think they're huge time savers. Instead of having to go up to a tab and click, I'm very reliant on my keyboard shortcuts, so I don't usually use a lot of stuff like that. Window, we already know window. You can click on any of those and they will open your palettes or your windows over here. Help, I don't use Photoshop Online Help. I feel like it's very slow, and I would just rather search the internet if I need help with something. So I don't usually use that. But I think we've pretty much covered all of the palettes and all of the tabs at the top. So that pretty much concludes this tutorial, and then the next tutorial we're going to work on is we're going to start using the layers tab, and I'm going to show you how to use a layer and use your brush on that layer to start doing some small edits. So check back with me in a little while to see that one. Thanks, guys.